The next thing we're going to see are check constraints. These are extra fancy constraints we can define, basically custom constraints on a given column or columns, which we'll see in a moment. Well, we'll see that in a separate video coming up. So a simple example would be doing something like making sure the age column is greater than 18. Or at a minimum, maybe it's just positive. We don't want to have a negative age for a user. And the way that we do this is when we define the column, age is an integer, then we write check, and then in parentheses, whatever expression we might want, age greater than 18. And this is going to return true or false, which is going to be 1 or 0, right? If this returns 1, then we pass that test and age is considered valid. But if it returns 0, then the age is invalid and the entire row would be invalid. We wouldn't insert that age. So let me show you that example, or maybe another example. Let's do create table, I don't know, just users. And we'll say users have to have a username that is varchar 20. Sure, not null. And age has to be an integer. And what we've seen in the past is I could set that to be negative. So instead, I'm going to say, here's our custom check. Age must be greater than 0. Let's just do that. This example is 18, but this one is 0. It's the same concept, obviously just a different number. All right, so let's create that table. Now, if I do an insert into users, and I'll do username, comma age, values, and our username here will be Blue the cat, my cat Blue, and age will be, I think she's, in human years, she's like 50 or 60. She's getting up there. Well, in cat years, rather. Okay, I hit enter, no problem whatsoever. But if I instead tried to insert another username like Colt Steele, and I put my name as -3, we get this check constraint. Users check 1 is violated. So this message doesn't really help us much. We will see how we can actually come up with a custom name for our constraints in the next video. But we do see that I got an error, right? If I select star from users, that user was not inserted. Colt Steele is not in there. -3 is not in there. Age has to be positive. So that part's working. What I'm going to show you next is how we can come up with a custom message. But before we do that, why don't we try one more example that's a little more complicated? I can do things like enforce that a username cannot have a space in it, or even that it has to be a palindrome. I could do whatever I want. Let's try that one. Let's create a table called palindromes. How do you spell palindrome? Is it palin? I think it's palindromes, like this. And there's going to be one column, which is word, and that's going to be a varchar. Let's call it varchar 100. And I want to make sure that it's the same forwards and backwards. So what I would do is write a check to see that the reverse, if you remember the reverse method or reverse string function, select reverse of hello, gives me Oleg in reverse. So I want to check that the reverse of the word is equal to the word, right? So if I have a word like race car, which is a palindrome, the reverse of that is equal to the word itself. So this is silly, but I just want to show you we're not limited to numbers or to, greater than, although that's a really common use case. We can use between, we can use the other operators we've seen, and we can use different functions. So I'm checking to see that the reverse of the word is equal to the word. Let's see what happens if I try and insert into that table. I need a semicolon. Insert into palindromes word values. Our first one will be race car. And that works. But what about something that is not a palindrome, like mommy? That is not going to work. And we see palindromes check 1 is violated. But if I instead did mom, that will work because it's the same forwards and backwards. So silly example, but yet another example of a check constraint. We can do whatever we want, assuming that we can write the correct expression that is going to be some sort of Boolean true or false value, a 1 or a 0. All right, next I'm going to show you how we can customize the name of our constraints.